Hi everyone, it's Jay here, and today I'm going to review some of the manga and manhwa I've read over the last few months. As you can see, I've not read as much as I'd hoped to. Life got really busy, and I also love reading sci-fi and fantasy books, so my reading time is split between books and manga. I've put these in order of how much I like them. For the series, I've treated them as a whole instead of splitting them up into individual volumes, then putting them in order. The reason for that is because apart from Business Proposal, I pretty much binge read each of these series in one go because they are awesome, but I'm going to talk more about that later. So I'll start with the negative first and end on a happy note. This is Tista by Tatsuya Endo, who also did Spy X Family. This is the first manga series I've ever read and definitely said no, I am not reading anymore. The concept was great. A nun going around killing bad people. I love a good vigilante story. It started well in terms of action, and I like that she had the scope actually on her eye. I think that was really cool. But midway through the volume, the story gets kind of bitty, jumps from character to character in a way that is not cohesive at all. I didn't feel attached to Tista at all, which didn't help, and the lack of character development combined with too much being crammed into the first volume meant I struggled to finish it. And the last third was a mess. I thought so anyway. We barely see the main character, which is not great when as a reader you already feel disconnected from her. I forced myself to finish it because I've never not finished a volume before, but I'm a bit gutted, to be honest. It had the potential to explore some really interesting themes, but the execution was just completely off. Then I found out that it's only going to be a 2-volume series, and that was the final nail in the coffin for me. 2 volumes to try and tie this story together, no way was that going to work. That was really negative, and it is just my opinion. If you enjoyed it, I'm really glad you did. It just wasn't for me at all. The next volume is Blue Morning Volume 1. It follows Akihito Kuze, who suddenly inherits the Kuze viscountship when his father dies. And then you've got the family butler, Tomoyuki Katsuragi, who basically runs the household whilst Akihito learns what he needs to. The butler is well thought of amongst the aristocracy, and Akihito really wants his approval, but just doesn't get it. And the butler remains standoffish with him. Whilst it was an interesting read, their relationship has not started well at all, and I don't know how repairable it is. There's also a big secret surrounding the butler, which Akihito is trying to discover. Neither character is 100% likeable, like at all, but I want to know where it ends up, and I did enjoy it. It's just one of those volumes where the character is making mistakes, this one, and you want to grab them by the shoulders and shake them. Ask them if this is really what they want to do. I will continue to read this, but I cannot find volume 6 for a reasonable price anywhere. There's one listing on eBay, but it's going for £100. I refuse to pay that. I'll keep looking and hope it pops up somewhere. Next is Dragon King's Imperial Wrath. So we're now into the section where I enjoyed the books. I want to keep reading the series, but there's nothing special going on. In my opinion, this is all my opinion. So this is a new series which has a really cute cover. And look how cute that little rat is. It's so cute. We have King Yawen, who's the leader of the Dragon Clan and invites princesses from the other 12 clans to come to his lands as he's looking for a bride. And we have Ryuing. She's from the Rat Clan, the weakest of the clans, and the first half of the volume really focuses more on her point of view, and she's an avid reader, which is reflected in the way she logically thinks through different situations. For example, her clan's future and the reality of relying on certain forms of help, and how that would affect her clan in future generations. She's a likeable enough character, and whilst I liked the first half, the second half was better because things were finally explained. There were times when I really didn't quite understand what was going on, or the motivations behind what was going on. And we see King Yawen and what makes him tick more in the second half. Overall, it's a decent start to the series. The relationship is much more one-sided than I expected it to be. There's still a lot of background, secrets to uncover, and we're left on a bit of a cliffhanger with a hint of hostility with the Bird Clan. The Bird Clan. Next is King's Beast, Volume 10. Again, I liked it, but I found this volume to be disappointing compared to previous volumes. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers as much as possible, so I'm going to keep this brief and honest. I was hoping for a bit more angst here. After everything that has happened, these characters, I thought, deserve to stop, feel the pain of what they've missed out on and what they've been through before moving on and enjoying the rest of their lives. But I felt there was barely an acknowledgement of the past and pain there, and no consequences for the guy who did it. Like, Tenyo actually goes to him for advice. This would not be a problem for me if there was some sort of redemption arc for this guy, but there is none. I really hate it when storytellers do that. And the reveals felt shallow when it was the perfect opportunity for characters to discuss their emotions a bit, have some character development and bonding time. I'm really hoping the next volume is going to be better. Next is Business Proposal. I reread the first one over the summer and then I read this one, but they're in separate places because though I found them very different in terms of how much I enjoyed them. So Volume 2 was not as good as Volume 1, in my opinion. The first half was, I don't want to use the word dull, but it felt a bit daft and fillery. So characters were responding to situations in ways that didn't feel natural to them. It felt more like the author was making them react poorly to situations to create a bit of drama and fill some pages. Halfway through though, it really picked back up and I was back to laughing at the antics of the characters. Harry having a black eye and wearing sunglasses at work killed me. It was brilliant. Her catch up with her friend Minwoo was brutal. Like, she got friend zoned so hard again. Her internal crying was brilliant. So funny. See, the second half really redeemed this volume for me. The comedy felt natural there and the story flowed so easily. And the ending, oh my gosh, I cannot wait for Volume 3. That's all I'll say. Then we got the Remarried Empress, Volumes 1 and 2. I really enjoyed reading this. The front cover, especially this one, is stunning. The storyline is so fun to read and at times completely maddening. I do not understand how someone can go from being in a loving marriage, they've grown up and been happy together, to suddenly, oh hey, I found this girl whilst I was out and I'm going to go help her out. Oops, now she's my mistress. And why is this making my wife unhappy? Like, there's obliviousness on the Emperor's side and then there's just flat out cruelty here. No empathy at all. I can only take my hat off to Empress Navier. She gets through it all with dignity and poise. She knows she can't really do anything about it. And oh my goodness, I really, really dislike Rashta, the mistress. She's manipulative, prances around with this naive persona on her. But I love it when she meets Prince Henri, and offers to show him around the palace, which, first of all, the audacity. He's got the Empress showing him around already. Who does she think she is? She's been there all of 5 seconds. But Henry straight up rejects her offer, then tells her 3 as a crowd. Beautiful. Thank you for not allowing her to sweet talk her way into that moment. Ugh, see, this series makes your blood pressure rise, and I think a lot of that stems from the way the Emperor treats Empress Navier. Every time something doesn't go Rashta's way, he blames Navier, like constantly. It's frustrating. Verging on being unrealistic, if I'm being a bit honest. It makes for great drama, but if you take a step back and think about it, it's a bit like he's had a personality change where he suddenly thinks his mistress is far more important than his wife. I mean, he publicly humiliates her, abandoning her on the dance floor when Rashta starts crying because someone won't dance with her. Ugh, anyway, I will stop right there. I've ordered the next volumes because I really enjoyed this series. The only thing that let it down slightly was the artwork, specifically the faces. Sometimes they're drawn a little weird and the proportions don't seem right, but never mind, it's only a small thing. Next is The Promised Neverland, and what a series. The author does not hold back in this series. The characters act on their own. I feel like the characters are driving the story forwards, not the author kind of manoeuvring the characters to get a certain result, if that makes sense. Ray in this one is such an interesting character, and yes, he can come across as selfish, but not here. He really wants to save Norman, and when a certain something happens, I won't spoil it if you haven't read it, you can just see how much it affects him. He is unbelievably brave in this one. He redeems himself in a way I did not see coming, and the kids in this are just so smart, all of them. It's refreshing to see the support characters act on their own in the background, not just blindly follow the main character's directions. They can think for themselves, find out information for themselves, and it all leads to great emotional plot reveals. I love this volume so much. For me, this is how you include angst and sadness without ultimately having the characters give up. And this is what I wanted to see in King's Beast Volume 10. Allow the characters to heal by feeling their emotions and working through them. Anyway, enough said. This series is amazing and I'm only on volume 4. I strongly recommend it to everyone out there. Next up is Business Proposal Volume 1, which was miles better than the second one. So I read this before summer, then I reread it over the summer, so I thought I'd include it here. This volume also is signed inside, which is great. I got this from Comic-Con earlier this year at the Yen Press stall, where they had an offer on, 4 for 3 I think. So maybe that's why it's signed, or maybe they're all signed. If you have a volume and you bought it from a shop, would you mind letting me know if yours is signed or not? I'm curious. But this volume was funny throughout. Such a strong start to a series. So the premise is Harry Shin works for a company and she's not doing great financially because she's helped her family out so much. She's a good daughter, but she also has a rich best friend who's been set up on a blind date with the CEO of the company that Harry works at, and this best friend convinces Harry to go in her stead, and by convince I mean bribe. But Harry has no idea she's going on a blind date with the CEO, Taemu Kang. Luckily for her, wearing a wig and lots of makeup means no one will recognise her. So she goes into this date with the aim of putting him off completely so he never wants to date her again, whilst the CEO goes in with an entirely different goal. It makes for a cringe fest of a date. I'm talking toe curling, remove your eyes from the book in horror type of cringing. This is actually the first manhwa I've ever read, and I was really impressed with the quality of the paper. It's quite thick, which makes sense if you're printing in colour, and it made me understand why manhwa is more expensive than manga. In particular with this series, the volume is seriously thick, really thick, which is great for the readers. Okay, now we're getting into the really good stuff. The Otherworld's books depends on the bean counter, volumes 1, 2 and 3. So over the summer I had a day off, decided to read the first volume, good way to start my day. I then went on to binge read all 3. Needless to say, I enjoyed them all. The story starts with a different world where magic exists, transporting a girl who is their prophesied holy maiden from our world into theirs. But in the process, a guy called Kondo, this guy here, tries to help her and accidentally gets pulled into this new world as well. He's someone who keeps himself busy, so it's not long before he finds himself a job in the accounting department. And it is so funny. He's raring to go and start working, and the staff are like, okay, time for tea, let's have a break. Like all the time. So this book takes a good look at how people are overworked in the workforce, how it's an unspoken rule to just do the work, be quiet, don't complain, to the point where being ill is the norm. Suffering migraines, stomach cramps, not getting enough sleep. It's all okay as long as you get the work done. So I really like how this manga explores it and how hard it is for Kondo to actually stop and look after himself. He's pretty terrible at it actually, and it takes someone else stepping in for him to make any progress in that area. Which brings me to the love interest here, which is Arash, Knight Captain of the Third Royal Order. He's stoic, hard to read, and he ends up getting involved in Kondo's life and cares about his well-being, because Kondo is not very good at looking after himself. He works too hard, and then he discovers a potion that helps keep him alert so he can keep working. That does not end well. Well, actually it kind of does, but also it doesn't, because he gets magic sickness, which could have killed him. Thankfully, Arash saves him, certainly in an interesting way. Only in manga, that's all I'll say. I like the storyline. Kondo uncovers some dodginess in the way different departments ask for and receive money, and the second book has such a cliffhanger. I implore you not to read volume 2 until you have volume 3, because you will regret it. As I'm talking about it, I now want to reread this series, so I can't wait for book 4 to be released. It has been in Japan, but there's no information anywhere about when it's being released in English. I emailed the Empress asking, and they've very kindly emailed back saying that there's no current release date for it. So just to keep an eye out on their social media where they'll let us know. And here is the best series I read in the last few months. Villains Are Destined to Die. This series is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So let's start with the art. All the characters are really well drawn, but this series goes the extra mile with the colours. So see just how beautiful the art is. First of all, I have hair envy, but look how detailed the colours are. See how beautiful the art is, the shading, the light, the gradients of colour. When you compare it to Business Proposal, and there's nothing wrong with Business Proposal, but look at the difference in the art there. It's just on a different level. So moving on to the storyline, we have a woman who hasn't had the easiest of lives, being thrown into a love game. Not only that, she's put into the body of the villainess, Penelope. The potential love interests all have percentages over their heads, and the more they like Penelope, the more likely she is to survive. In the game, when she was playing it in the real world, she was killed multiple times by these love interests because the percentage over their heads were too low. So to a certain extent, she is manipulating these guys because she wants them to like her more, but she also doesn't want to die by their hands, which, fair enough. The parallels between her real life and the life Penelope has led allows her to really empathise with Penelope, and it made me feel so much more attached to her. So both were adopted into a rich family, both are treated horribly by their family, but how she dealt with it in real life is very different to how Penelope did. But she understands why this game character has acted up in the past, and it allows us to bond with the character as well. You know this isn't just some spoiled brat. There's some childhood trauma going on here that begs to be seen by those around her, but they continue to be cruel to her. I'll say it again, I love this series. So much so that I've read it 4 to 5 times in just a few months. It will make you laugh, your blood will boil, you will see some fantastic character development going on. There's a scene between Penelope and her brother Reynold in the attic. If you've read it, you know which scene I'm talking about. And he is so self-righteous in his anger, and she just flips it around and ultimately leaves him speechless. I think this is one of my favourite scenes, followed closely by the last scene in volume 4, which involves the other brother. It's just a fantastic series. I feel like she's putting to right Penelope's messed up life, and it happens slowly, but so realistically that I cannot wait for volume 5 to come out. I have it on pre-order, and it's killing me that I have to wait until mid-November for it to come out. So there we go, the series I read recently and my honest thoughts on them. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe there's something here that you would enjoy too. Happy manga reading, everyone. Bye!